Howdy, everybody. Welcome to the Shatter the Script feature episode, Stats and Scars. This is week 13 in the making. Back with the full crew for the second week in a row. And we got a lot in store for you guys today. A couple of injuries, plus our down bad list, our DB list, as well as some stat analysis, NFL predictions. We'll go through the Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs, the Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. And then, of course, we're going to put a high emphasis at the end of the episode with our college football winners and losers, as well as our conference championship predictions. However, if you're a first-time listener, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. The feature episodes are always a fun addition to the Shatter the Script Network, and it's been fun to do this most of the year, and it's crazy that it's already December, but you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube at Shatter the Script, or if you find us on video content, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter with the same handle at Shatter the Script. With that all being said, let's get started and go straight into injuries with the medical guy who, honestly, we talked a little bit off air, there isn't a lot of injuries. So
No, good week.
It's a good week. That's a good week for your, for your role right there. It's like, okay, we pray on no injuries, and when we come in here, there's only like 4 or 5. It's like, that's actually kind of good. It's not 20, every week. So
Yeah, I'm not having to just pull out a CVS receipt of injuries and whatnot. So
less people hurt.
yeah, less hurt people. More fantasy points, except for Ryan, because all these happen to be on Ryan's team, I think.
Yeah, the top of the line here, it's all emotional damage.
Yeah. So let's hop into it. It'll take about 2 minutes. So our first two are obviously going to be Chris McCaffrey and Jordan Mason, the running back combo for the San Francisco 49ers. Chris McCaffrey said it was his PCL. Very strange because when you watch the video, it doesn't look like it at all. Even watching it, I was like, this has got to be, calf, Achilles, maybe hamstring, something, because you just saw his whole backside of his leg just coil up, and I was like, interesting. And then Jordan Mason with the high ankle sprain, both are heading to IR. So Ryan put all that FAAB money into Garindo or whoever you're trying to put that into, and have fun with that, buddy. Next on here is Taysom Hill. I don't know if y'all actually saw this hit, but this was actually pretty gruesome. And I know there's kind of some controversy with multiple different tackles this past week, and we'll get into that in our last one. But it wasn't similar, but it kind of showed that there was slightly a hip drop tackle. But then what caused it is, there's someone grabbing him from his back, and then doing the hip drop maneuver, but then there was someone coming forward towards him and actually hit him in the front of the knee and turn that knee into a wet noodle. And so they did say that he had a torn ACL. I'm not laughing because that's funny, but just because that's all that they said was his ACL. If you watch the video, you're looking like, oh my god, that's it, ACL. You're thinking it's just destroyed. So sucks for him because, we all know what he means to that Saints offense, even though he is this weird little gadget piece. They've started to use him pretty well these last few weeks. I know I've benefited from him in fantasy the last few weeks, but tough to see. And, he's that physical player. I think he's coming up on the end of that weird contract they did, and he's 34, so it just kind of sucks to see it happen like that. Especially with the success he was having the last couple weeks. Next, I believe this person's still on Ryan's team. I'm not sure, but DK Metcalf, he came up on the. Oh, okay. He came up on the injury report with a knee injury. Said he might have retweaked that MCL a little bit. So it's more of wait and see what happens with that. So that'll be interesting, and you don't have to keep an eye on it anymore, Ryan. But maybe that makes you feel a little better that it's not all your team now. And then next
that's my choice, Jacob.
Yeah.
I was like, that's enough. I can't do this anymore.
Gets off the podcast. Next is obviously the biggest controversy with is Trevor Lawrence with the concussion. Reports on ESPN actually say that they're unsure if he'll play the remainder of the year. I don't know if that's due to just a concussion or kind of the whole slew of all the injuries he's had this year, plus that Jacksonville Jaguars team being pretty abysmal. And so it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if y'all want to get into like the whole controversy with the hit or anything. I think it could go either way.
Yeah.
The biggest, I was kind of watching, I don't really watch, Speak or anything like that, but I was watching First Things First when I got home today. And one of them brought up a good point that they don't believe it would have been as gruesome if the defensive back didn't lead with his forearm. If he would have kind of left that kind of out of the picture, it wouldn't have been as bad. But I do agree with like on the quarterback end of it is like, protect yourself a little bit. Obviously, I don't know about the whole, whoever brought it up. One of the analysts brought it up about, Rex Ryan brought it up on whatever show that is.
Get Up.
Get Up. About talking about like diving, like almost shoulder first and diving at their ankles. Don't know if as a quarterback I'd be doing anything with my shoulders going, first. Also, how does the ref differentiate between like, is he going down on purpose? Is he lowering his shoulder? Right. And that's the thing is you end up then putting your head in, which ultimately was the injury. You end up putting your head in a vulnerable spot as well, going head first into a defender's ankles. Obviously, you could take whichever side. I don't think either is wrong. I think the quarterbacks need to protect themselves more. However, this is kind of a product of the environment of the fake slides, the slowing up and then taking off right before you're about to go out of bounds. And then changing the rules for the quarterbacks, right? Trying to protect them more because they're the money makers and that's what everybody wants to see. And so it's kind of the product they've created. And so I don't know if you read the report, but they suspended him not only for the hit, but for the actions afterwards.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't really agree with the 3-game suspension. I think that's a little overkill. I think you give him a suspension for the hit. And then, we all said it afterwards after seeing some of how the players reacted. If you hit your quarterback like that, you got to be ready for something to come to you. Right. And I don't fault Evan Ingram or whoever for, dog walking the guy on the sideline. Like that's what you would expect. I was really, more concerned for the defensive back after he hit him because it was on Jacksonville's sideline and, they're having a rough season. What do they have to lose kind of thing. And so I think the 3-game suspension was overkill by far. 1-game suspension, you get the point across, you fine them. Cool. But now you've suspended a guy for a team that is, in the middle of a race and whatnot, and, you're taking money out of his pocket and stuff like that. So I just thought that part was overkill. I'll let y'all go into that. Y'all might have the same opinions. I don't know. But I just thought the whole suspension part was a little too much.
Yeah. I think this trend, honestly, will probably never end because of, like you mentioned, the fake slides and whatnot, and, Patrick Mahomes, like, faking going out of bounds and then running, another 30 yards for a touchdown, everybody going oohs and ahs, when the reality of the fact is a linebacker like Fred Warner in that game could come in like a piss missile and hit him out of bounds or whatever while he's still in bounds and get a 30 billion yard penalty for hitting the king Patrick Mahomes. And then later on, Caleb Williams tries to do the same thing and gets absolutely speared in the knees when he tried to stay in bounds and make a play, looking like he was going to run out of bounds, basically trying to pull Mahomes. And so it's like, sometimes it's on the quarterback, sometimes it's on the defender, but it'll never end. It's a product of what the NFL created, and there is a coach that follows the trends in football, like Coach Dan KCX. He's pretty fun to watch on Twitter and Instagram and stuff, where he's advocating for quarterbacks to dive head first, because when you slide with your legs first, you're giving up your entire upper body just basically as a tee for a golf club, and just get rocked. So so as y'all know, like when I was playing at Sam, my roommate was Eric, the quarterback, and he used to get rocked because he would slide instead of diving head first. So
they started telling him to slide head or to dive forward instead of sliding. And I was like, that sounds crazy. But if you think about it, you're already moving forward full speed. So when you're sliding, you're giving, like Jared's saying, you're leaning back, already going full speed in a bang bang play, and giving up the entire top half of your body. But if you're falling forward, then you're probably saving yourself more, and you can actually control your body more from taking a hit.
Yeah.
And I thought that was crazy at first, but if you actually think about it, it makes a ton of sense. But going back to what Jared's saying, like, those bang bang plays are going to be really hard to stop. And when you have quarterbacks that are becoming runners and even more runners, it's going to be even harder to stop these kind of hits because, that one with Aziz is like, I have it on my DB list, but the slide rule is going to become, it needs to become a major issue to talk about because you're asking these defenders not to hit here, not to hit there, not to do this, but you also have quarterbacks that can run and are dangerous with their legs. And
taking
you gotta,
advantage of the rule.
Exactly. So you're going to need to start having either the conversation that is what we were told growing up, which is when that quarterback crosses the line, he's a runner, or you need to have a conversation around how the quarterback's going to protect themselves more because you're asking the game's already excuse me, the game in my opinion is already favored offensively heavy. I mean, it's so heavily favored. So now, everybody was talking about how he needed to be suspended for the rest of the season. Well, it's like, I kind of thought, like Jacob said, the hit could go either way. But at the same time, you're asking him not to play defense.
Yeah.
And
right.
you've seen what happens when players give up, like Jared's saying, and they exploit it. You see what happens when players give up. They do a fake slide like Kenny Pickett did, and they go score or some bullshit like that, or like Mahomes gets the extra 40 yards.
Yeah.
So the conversation needs to be had. It's like, what are you going to do to prevent that? You're going to penalize defensive players even more? Or are you going to tell the quarterbacks, hey, when you're running the football, you better get ready to get your, ass kicked, or you need to slide and go down and take care of your body. So either way.
Yeah. And the worst thing, too, is seeing, the pause frames of, like, the play and being like, oh, there was time to pull up. And it's like, dude, that's so unfair because, like you said, these dudes are moving like piss missiles through the line and everything. And there's no way that you can just sit there and say, like, oh, he could have pulled up and whatnot. Well, what's he going to do? Just jump over him? Dive over him? Well, then you create the whole thing about, like, then you could hurt other people. Yeah. And so I saw plenty of posts about, the pause frames and stopping it and slow motion. It's like, that's not realistic. It's the same concept of, like, with an offensive play and being like, oh, you see this guy was 40 yards downfield, open, and this guy didn't see him. It's like, well, okay, that's unfair. But I agree. I think we're all kind of in agreement there. It's just kind of a shitty thing, and doesn't help the game there too much.
No, not at all. Do we move into the DB list?
DB list.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Well, that was a good way to start it off because that was my first DB list candidate. So
nice. Well, I'll go through. I just have one.
That's right.
And it's kind of been a hot topic all season, and you've heard just all these crazy statistics, and Ryan may mention these, in this pod or later, but DB list for me has got to be the Bengals defense. Dude. Yeah. I was hearing some stats come out today about, like, the Bengals are like 2-4 when they score over 30 points. The rest of the NFL is like 50 something and 3 or something wild like that. Okay, cool. I won't go into too many of those stats because I want you to say them that way they're actually correct, and you can sit there and listen to how bad this defense is.
Well, that was the only one that I had for the defense, but okay. I'll let you expand.
Yeah. It's just, we all see it. Joe Burrow is statistically having the best year of his career. Mm. And, I think he has 30 touchdowns, 5 picks.
Yep.
And, he's lighting the league up. That offense looks great. And that defense is just getting torched. And, like, you understand, like, having a bad defense. But, like, when you're averaging on offense, like, close to 30, if not 30 a game, and you're 4-7 or whatever they are right now. Like that's brutal. And we use the whole thing is like everybody gets paid to play, and that's just a brutal product to put out there. If you truly, are comparison to like an old school Big 12 defense where it's like that and you still can't win. So DB list for me has got to be that Bengals defense. It's just, it makes for a fun game to watch, but it's just an atrocity.
Yeah. The analyst.
Yeah, I'll just go with the other one I had, which was what we were talking about earlier. The goal. Well, we were talking about not on this podcast, but the golden at bat rule the MLB is trying to implement. So a little backstory on that. Basically, the MLB is exploring a tactic where like it's your golden at bat. Instead of going through the actual traditional lineup of 1 through 9, you can pick whoever you want to go and take that at bat for your team. So, it could be like, I'll just use the Astros for example, Bregman coming up to the plate, and you don't want Bregman to bat, and so Altuve batted at 1. So then you send Altuve back out there to bat for Bregman. And I just think that's really stupid, and that's just trying to get people to watch even more. Excuse me. And it's just pretty clear that's a very stupid rule. Anyway, we can say that back now that Trump's back in office. All know.
Oh God, no, I agree with you, Ryan. It's crazy.
Trust me, none of our audience gives a flying fuck. So
but I agree. It's like the whole concept of like, back when the Astros had Martin Maldonado batting in the 9 hole, and you can sit here and being like, yeah, screw that, Yordan, get up there. And it's like, bro, that makes no sense. And I mean, talking about what I was watching earlier, I mean, they had a whole analyst, production up there saying how they agree with it, how they should do it. And I'm like, guys, like, come on, like just put the juiced baseballs back in the game if you want more offense.
Yeah,
do whatever.
Or something.
But doing this whole golden at bat thing, I'm like, oh God, give me a break. And the fact, I don't know how true the report is that he's considering it, but like, could you imagine like being an actual player who's worked, your whole life to do that and being like, like you're the 9-hole hitter for whoever, and you've worked your whole life and blah, blah, blah. And then you get into it and your coach is like, no, you suck. Let's put this other guy up there. So and I mean, it doesn't advantage the pitchers either, because you can't sit here and be like, oh, I want to re-enter, Jacob deGrom in to face this last batter instead of, your closer or whatever. Like it just doesn't make sense. And it might be old man yelling at cloud type thing, but to me, it just seems pretty stupid, as Ryan would have termed it.
Yeah. I love the medical guy's reaction to that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little lightheaded. I got a head cold, so
yeah, he's sick.
I'm letting things fly a little easier.
And I would add on to that and to say, I feel like everything that commissioner's doing in the MLB is basically to deteriorate, America's pastime for what it has always been. And essentially what he's been doing is turning it into the NBA. Like, not like how the NBA is run, but the NBA, where it's like we want the best player with the ball in clutch moments. Like, this isn't the NBA. You got to deal with the cards you're dealt. There is no shot clock in the MLB. So just all this stuff, I've gone back and forth with the whole pitch clock ordeal, but it's just kind of an odd way to play baseball these days. We kind of liked that the crowd erupting as the pitcher's getting ready to throw his most important pitch of the game, and then you face a 9-hole hitter, which, historically, you go back to the Rangers and St. Louis Cardinals, you have these cats that are coming in that were not superstars like David Freese, who are the savior of their team in the World Series. So it's like things like that. It's like, okay, we're not going to put David Freese in. We're going to put, Pujols or whoever the hell else is on the team or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you're stripping away an opportunity for a young cat who worked his way through a miserable minor league experience. For my DB list, though, I have Kyler Murray, who is 0-2 since Warzone drops and Black Ops 6. So I just think it's hilarious. I saw the edit or whatever, and I was like, on all over Twitter, and it's just one of those things that it cracks up my sense of humor beyond the max. It's like it's such a stereotypical narrative with Kyler Murray, and then it happens every year. And dating back to when they were like, I want to say they were like 8-3 a couple of years ago, and they finished like 9-8 or something like that. And it's just it's common. Like they were first place. Now they're going to go play Seattle, which we're going to get into that prediction here in a second. And who knows if they're going to win that game? You know, because we got to be on stream, bro. Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's still the funniest thing. What was it, a couple years ago when he did his contract, and originally they had like, hey, you can only like play video games like so long or whatever or something, or like
film hours that were required,
you had like 6 film hours a day or something, like something wild to limit his screen time on, you know, the game. And I was like, Jesus. Dude.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, any other DB list candidates?
No.
The only other one I had on here was Thursday night football game between Bears and Lions, and how that game ended. That was absolutely atrocious by the Bears. How they didn't call a timeout and do any of that. That was terrible.
Yeah. My last one was Ryan Day versus Michigan. The Ohio State coach. I think he's
that's another great one
against Michigan.
Yeah.
I mean, brutal loss for the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into the stat analysis presented by the Analyst, knower of ball.
Yes. So I try to keep mine short and sweet. I'm a little bit under the weather, so quarterback of the week. Actually, my stat of the week was going to be what Jacob said. Just talking about that Bengals defense. We've talked about it a couple times how it reminds us of that 2020 season with the Cowboys and Dak, and how bad that defense was. This is definitely worse, especially the season that Burrow is putting together. Just because, Burrow didn't get hurt, but it's pretty clear that the Bengals have just now they're officially dead. They have no chances to make the playoffs. But it's very, very evident that this Bengals defense is historically bad. Anyway, because especially the Bengals offense, I think they're scoring close to 30 to 40 points a game. I mean, they are putting up some numbers and have nothing to show for it. So moving into our quarterbacks, cannot believe this is the quarterback of the week, but I had to pick him. Russ Truss, Mr. Unlimited Wilson.
It's spicy.
It's spicy.
Be careful. It's spicy.
Yeah, Mr. Run No Huddle Shadow Offense. 2-minute drill out there on the field. Anyway, he went 29 for 38, 414 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You know when Russell Wilson does this too, your defense is not good, and the Bengals are officially dead. The Steelers team continues to be sneaky, and I think you could make an argument for Tomlin to be coach of the year. I mean, he's gone through 2 quarterbacks. The Steelers are 9-3, but I mean, I think it should personally be Dan Quinn with the Commanders, or it should be Harbaugh with the Chargers. I think those are probably 2 really good coach of the year candidates because they just weren't expected to be anything good, especially the Commanders, and they are. So, doubt of the week, not a shocker here. Derek Carr, 24 of 37, 184 yards, 1 touchdown, and an absolute L. This team, the Saints team, even with the coaching change, is just abysmal to watch. They're not fun. When you're using Taysom Hill like you're using McCaffrey, you're kind of a waste of time.
More accurately, like you're using Debo.
Yeah, I mean it's just disgusting. So I mean Derek Carr is just like the most unsurprising quarterback right now. And I almost picked Kirk Cousins in this too. He had 4 interceptions.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going with.
Yeah, not a good stat line for Kirk. It kind of makes you think that the Falcons knew what was going on when they drafted Michael Penix Jr. You know, they got a lot of flack for that pick, but looking back now, that actually might pay off pretty well for him.
Yeah.
So, moving on to running back of the week, excuse me, Bucky Irving, 25 carries, 152 yards, and a touchdown. I picked this one because it feels like every year, if you're a fantasy football player, there's like a bunch of running backs that people tell you to grab. They're gonna they're gonna vulture carries, or like this year it was Braylon Allen with Breece Hall, or Jonathan Brooks with Chuba Hubbard, or Blake Corum with Kieran Williams, and Bucky Irving with Rashad White, or there's another one at the beginning of the year.
Zeke with Rico Dowdle.
or Marshawn Lloyd with
Green Bay,
or Jalen Wright is the other one. It feels like every year you're reading through a bunch of fantasy articles where people are trying to get you to grab, the running back 2 of the team because he's going to take it over. Well, this is the one that actually came into fruition here. Bucky Irving has definitely taken the role from Rashad White, and if you own him in your fantasy league, you got to keep starting him because it's going to come to a time where he's going to be the guy. I mean, he already is, but this is going to be one of those situations where he's going to save somebody's fantasy team. So,
me.
Yeah, I think it is you that has him in our league. As for my dud of the week, it's Chuba Hubbard. I actually just traded for him in our league, but 12 carries, 43 yards, and a fumble that caused the L. I think that's a tough week to do, especially after grabbing a big contract. I still don't have any worries about him losing his spot to Brooks. I know some people do, but I think for the fantasy managers that own him, which is me now, I think he's still pretty valuable and can make something happen, especially now that Bryce Young is starting to come alive again. And I think Jared covered that in his other episode, but you don't pay a guy for nothing. So for him to just go into, the shallow realm after they think, what did they pay him, Jared? Like $12 million?
Yeah, something like that.
They're not going to do that.
Deal.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. So anyway, wide out of the week. I thought this was a pretty interesting pick here.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Jerry Jeudy against his former team, the Broncos too. Broncos defense is not something to mess with. We've kind of mentioned on this podcast before. I would say they're probably one of the most underrated and easily a top 5 defense in the NFL right now. He had 9 receptions, 235 yards, and a touchdown. I feel like this is what we expected him to do when he got in the league. There was a lot of hype around him, but he's never really done much in the league, so I guess all it took was Jameis Winston, which is interesting that Jabu could do that. And then dud of the week. I feel like this whole team is a dud, but Devontae Adams on the Jets, man. What so much for like a big pop. They trade for Devontae Adams. They finally get Hassan Reddick. They do all this with the Jets. I would say that the Jets are probably the most disappointing team in the NFL this season. Either them or the Niners. The Niners, I would have to go with the Jets just because the Niners are
brutally
injured to all hell. Like literally injured to all hell. I don't think there is a single starter on the team that is not injured.
Yeah.
The Jets are more like they're just completely dysfunctional. But Devontae Adams, I just realized I didn't put a stat line on here, but he had like 3 catches for 54 yards. He's just been the most boring receiver out of that. Everybody when they traded thought he was going to do something, and he just hasn't. He hasn't done anything. So that kind of wraps up this week. You're starting to get a very clear picture of who's going to continue and be in the playoffs. This is a big week for a lot of fantasy managers like myself. They're trying to make the playoffs. But you're really starting to see from actually the NFL and real life football who's in and who's out. It's starting to get to that time where we've mentioned it before, but now you're seeing who's thinking about sitting people. Now you're seeing, now you're starting to have conversations like the Trevor Lawrence conversation, the Chris Olave conversation of he got injured. We're not doing anything this season. It's probably best to just let him sit and let's wrap this up and go to the next season. So you're starting to see those conversations happen around the NFL, which is, it's smart if you're not competing, but if you are, then you're trying to figure out how to get those guys back as fast as you can. So anyway, that's all I got for my stat analysis.
Cool deal. Yeah, that was I like I like throwing the Kirk Cousins in there for sure.
Yeah.
And one of the funny things that I listen to with Jameis Winston that's been cracking me up is that I've been praying that the Lord would deliver me from pick sixes, and I think that is a hilarious statement post game.
Dude, he's so funny.
I know he is
Like
the most
unintentionally.
entertaining. Yeah. Look at the player next to you. All right.
Like, did you see like his pregame, like when they or like the graphic of where they like introduce the quarterbacks and he's like everybody else is like super serious and he's like in there dancing. I'm like the dude, and the thing is like most people you'd be like, bro, this is corny, but with him it's like, bro, that's funny. Like it seems genuine.
I don't know how you can hate the guy. Not a great quarterback, clearly, but like he's a lot of fun to watch, you know. He can throw for a heap of yards, but he is just so susceptible. Like that interception in the end zone was terrible. But he can also throw for 1 billion yards.
Yeah, and LASIK is using him as like an advertising tool.
Oh yeah.
I was like, maybe this wasn't the game to use that, but he still threw for like 450 something yards or something.
Yeah.
All right, let's go into NFL predictions. We've got 2 on the slate. I mentioned in the intro. We've got the 8-4 Los Angeles Chargers visiting Arrowhead to face the Kansas City Black Magic Chiefs at 11-1. And the Seattle Seahawks sitting at 7-5 atop of the division, I believe, visiting Arizona Cardinals, who are at 6-6 following their loss to the Vikings. Well, let's start with the Chargers at Chiefs and get into some predictions there. The medical guy will start with you, and then we'll move over to the analyst, and I'll finish this off with my predictions.
Yeah. So I'll my prediction is it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be more defensively than offensively. I think it'll be kind of your classic Chiefs-Chargers game where it's, super close and the game's kind of tight the whole way around. And it's going to be interesting because, like, both these defenses are, like, surprisingly, like, good. And I think this might be, like, kind of a grimy, gritty, ugly game. I've got the Chiefs winning because, they're the Kansas City Illuminatis, and they'll somehow pull something out of their ass and win this game. I have them winning 20-17, and it kind of stinks for the Chargers because like they're obviously a well-coached team. It seems like Harbaugh has come in and kind of like established what they want to do, and for like the first 6 games, it was like we're gonna try to kind of reserve and like play very conservative, and then it's like the last few he's been like, oh, Justin Herbert can sling this rock. Yeah. And you've seen like the freedom open up and just some of the kind of the classic Justin Herbert throws and all that, and especially with Ladd McConkey kind of finding his own zone there. But to me, it's just like the Chargers just don't have the weapons. Like they have to play a perfect Chargers game to win games. And I just don't think they have the weapons to keep up. So I have the Chiefs winning 20-17.
I like it. The analyst.
Yeah, they keep getting away with it. That's basically the sum up of the Chiefs. I don't know how they keep getting away with it, but I actually like the Chargers in this game. Like I would like for them to win, but they're gonna keep getting away with it. And I have 24-21, where it comes down to like 24-21, where it comes down to like a BS Chiefs field goal where they go up to win. But I just think the Chiefs are going to win this game, sadly, but it's going to be really close. It's going to be a fun game to watch. And Jacob is right. I'll just end on this, that the Chargers are like a year away. If they can go grab a receiver, like if they can get T. Higgins or someone like that that's about to come into free agency, or go get a rookie wideout, because that's really what they're missing. It's just like it's very different from a lot of other teams. They're missing the skill positions. They've got the offensive line, they've got the quarterback, but they really don't have any receivers that he can trust. Ladd McConkey's great, but he's going to need a complement, and they're going to need non-injury prone running backs. So I've got the Chiefs winning 24-21, and it's going to come down to some like voodoo magic, field goal, penalty, fumble, something like that. So
yeah. Yeah, the Chiefs have gotten away with a blocked field goal against the Broncos, a very odd, negated false start win over the Raiders when the Raiders were in plus territory, and a very narrow victory versus the Panthers. So they've dodged those three and lost to the one and only Josh Allen. So eventually, or I'm sorry, they didn't lose all. They barely won those three, is what I meant to say. But with all that being said, I think that this matchup is going to go exactly how you guys are putting it, and I've got 24-23 Chiefs because I just feel like the Chargers will be in line for some game-winning field goal, and it either be a miss or a shank or a penalty. Then they'll move it back and it'll re-kick it and miss something that is the Chargers were in position to win and they don't get it done. Something along those lines. But yeah, like the medical guy mentioned, the Chargers have to play a perfect Chargers game in order to beat the Chiefs, who are the perfectionists essentially at team football. So, but this will be an interesting one because this division has surprised a lot of people with Kansas City, the Chargers, and the Broncos all in contention to make the playoffs. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. Okay, moving on to the Seattle Seahawks at Arizona Cardinals. Again, Seattle's 7-5. They just came off a victory over the Jets. Arguably, they should not have won that game. And the Arizona Cardinals, coming off a 1-point loss to the Vikings, they were in commanding lead of this game pretty much for the entirety of the game and ended up losing. But yeah, we'll start the analyst if you're ready to do so. Your predictions of this game.
Yeah, I believe this is for first place in the NFC West, right? I think actually they would be tied.
I guess the Rams are 6-6 too. So
yeah, but I think this would be with tiebreakers. I think this would put Arizona and Seattle.
Yeah, I think you're right.
As because it would actually if Los Angeles wins, then it would be Arizona and LA sitting on the top. But anyway, I just think both of these teams have been roller coasters all year, but just two different types of roller coasters. Arizona's looked really good in games where they play a complete game and they just smack somebody right in the face, whether it be the Rams or I think they did the same thing to the Dolphins. Or then they have games where they just look completely lackluster and all over the place. And then Seattle's the other way, where they're a quarter by quarter roller coaster. One quarter they come out and K9 and DK and Geno and JSN all look unbelievably sound and straight and on the same page. And then the next quarter you got Geno throwing interceptions. DK's never going to get open. K9 fumbling the ball. They're so up and down it's hard to pay attention. So I'm going to go with the team that's a little bit more consistent, and I've got the Cardinals winning this one in a shootout, 34-31. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, potentially an overtime game, but I see the Cardinals pulling this one out and Kyler finally putting down the controller and pressing pause and looking at some film. So
1-2 since Warzone. Excuse me. Medical guy.
Yeah, so I agree with how Ryan described these teams. Wholeheartedly agree. These two teams are probably the most confusing teams in the NFL because the definition of a coin flip. You never know what you're going to get. I've said it about the Cardinals all year that they can come out on the first drive and it's 8 plays, 75 yards, touchdown to Marvin Harrison Jr. And then for the next 3 quarters or 2.5 quarters, they've gained 80 yards of offense. And you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
And then the same thing with Seattle. One game they can look, Geno can look like, he didn't write back. All these weapons are being used. You've got random Tyler Lockett just having these crazy good games as well as JSN. And then the next game, you look at the stat line and, it's a 28 for 40 stat line with a touchdown and 2 picks for, a couple hundred yards. And you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
And
right.
So they're just confusing, and it really is a hard game to predict. However, I think the curse of Call of Duty is going to take over. And so I have Seattle winning this game 28-14.
Hell yeah. I like it. Watching Kyler Murray over the past, especially as a fantasy owner in my work league and whatnot, like it's interesting to see like he just gets off to this amazing first half start and then just nothing in the second half. And it was the same way against the Vikings. It's almost like, they get to halftime and they're like, well, we understand like that he's going to go to objective B every round and we're going to wait on the corner and, snipe him as soon as he comes around the corner kind of thing. Like we're going to pre-aim the corner because we know he's going to come over here, throw a flash grenade, and he's going to get popped this time and we're going to take over B. That's essentially what a halftime adjustment for Kyler Murray looks like. With that being said, I dislike the Seattle's dysfunction that I've seen. And I monitor a lot of their games and I'm just like, what are they doing? And they're honestly the opposite. They're kind of like a slow starting first half team and then a fast starting second half team from what I've seen. I could be wrong about that, but I think this game, a lot like Ryan's prediction, I think it kind of goes to OT and then Arizona wins on a touchdown, and I got them winning 30-24 in a close game. But I really do think both of these teams are dead even in terms of talent, production, coaching, whatnot. I mean, it's basically the same team.
Yeah.
And I've been petitioning for Seattle to make a QB change for the last 2 years. I just think they're missing out on the talent on that roster.
Yeah, it would greatly benefit them. And I think we've also talked about maybe moving on from DK might benefit them as well. So I think DK's great, but I think either you got to make a change at quarterback and see how that works with DK, or you got to make a move on both. And then what we've been talking about off air, Jared, is basing that offense around JSN. So
yeah, I would petition for that. I just think if you're looking at like as an NFL organization, if you looked at Geno and said, and you ask yourself the question, is this guy going to get you one into the Super Bowl, and two, is he going to win the Super Bowl? The answer is no. The answer is simply no. Like I just don't ever see a scenario where that happens. There's too much more talented quarterbacks who have written back that I just don't think he's in competition with this. But a great comeback story. So
yeah.
All right, let's get into college football. Our listeners' favorite portion of the episode.
Yes.
College football winners and losers. Now, there's a lot because it was rivalry. I cannot say this.
Rivalry week.
Rivalry week. Dude, I cannot say that. That is just something that I cannot spit out. Pause. No diddy. But it was a lot of close matchups and historical matchups this week, and some surprises and some not so much as surprises. But let's get into it. We'll start with the medical guy. What do you have as who are your winners and losers from this past weekend? Well, I guess we'll start with your winners, and then we'll just kind of all collide.
Okay. Yeah. So my winners. I won't go with the obvious choice. I'll go with SMU. I've kind of been high on the ponies this year. I've said it,
100%.
last week how the difference between them and some of the other, lower tier top 15 teams is that they're kind of beating the shit out of everybody. And if you watch this game, I think they had one bad drive, and after that, it was an onslaught. And they just look like a well put together team. They don't play down to their competition. Their only loss was to BYU, who was pretty damn good for a majority of the year. Had a 2-game skid, and then kind of came back on top. Had a decent game this past week. So I'll have to go with the SMU Ponies as my first winner. So
yeah, I like it. They've been impressive all year, and I'm glad they're in the ACC champ game.
Yeah.
The Analyst, your winners from past weekend.
Let's see. I'm going to go with one that one of y'all probably didn't expect. South Carolina. I mentioned both South Carolina and Clemson on our episode last week, and these are two damn good football teams. And this was a good game. I didn't watch a lot of it, but I kind of kept up with it while I was sitting in the deer stand. And I would argue that South Carolina belongs in the college football playoff in some cases.
There we go.
There's some. I just think their losses keep them out of it based on their resume. But I think that I would argue if you're going to consider Bama to be one of the 3 lost teams to be considered, you should probably consider South Carolina. They're not going to, but I think that there's a case out there that could be made that South Carolina could be a playoff team if you wanted them to. Bama's probably going to get it because they are Bama.
Yeah.
But South Carolina has a pretty decent resume on who they've lost to and how those games turned out. So
Yeah, and it sucks. It sucks with that too, because if you look at the couple of those losses, like they ultimately got screwed.
yeah.
And obviously the one was the BS, unsportsmanlike conduct where he was blocking a guy, and it just happened to be the quarterback. And then the other was the quarterback got hurt.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate part of it, is they're, like you said, are most likely going to get screwed because they had some BS happen in some games. So, but I 100% agree with you about that.
Yeah. I mean, y'all been listening to the Shatter the Script episode where I've been a huge advocate of South Carolina. I had them as number 10 in my 12th men ranking and ahead of Alabama. And, they were really robbed of that LSU win. And I hate that for them. But ever since then, they've kind of gotten their payback. Yeah. And they're the most dangerous team to play right now. And, to see them come back late versus Clemson was impressive.
Yeah.
My winner of this week is actually Michigan. They went in and they beat Ohio State, obviously 13-10. What was interesting is their quarterback was only threw for 62 yards and 2 interceptions, and they still won the game. This one was ugly, an ugly game. But the reason I'm picking them as a winner is because, one, he kept the tradition of Harbaugh beating Ohio State alive. But the second one is this probably got you a lot of recruits. And especially on the defensive side of the ball, is that This is like, all right, Michigan's on an off year. They're going to go in and play overpowered Ohio State and probably get smacked. And no, wasn't the case. They upset them and possibly, they kicked them out of the Big Ten championship. Now you got Penn State playing in it against Oregon. So, shout out to Michigan. They finished 7 wins. They're going to make a bowl game. And, it's an off year for them. But first-year head coach and an expanded Big Ten, you're looking up. And you flipped, as we talked about last week, you flipped for $38 gazillion Bryce Underwood from LSU to Michigan. So things are looking up, I guess.
Yeah, Michigan did it without their 2 best players. Their best player on offense and best player on defense, which is a testament to Michigan and a testament to just how bad Ohio State played.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, too. One little comment is, on the cover of College Football 25, you got Donovan Edwards, and he essentially has had his role taken from, I believe his Mullings is the last name of the running back. I was looking to the game logs, looking at this game. I was like, this dude is completely taken over the backfield. So I don't know. That's interesting. I did not expect that. Okay.
What are the rest of your winners, Jared?
Yeah, I had a couple more. I think obviously I'll speak on the winner side of this, and I'll let you guys, if you have it on your loser side, speak on it. I've got Texas as a huge winner. Obviously going into Kyle Field and playing in an erupted environment. Saw mostly maroon in there, so no Brian Kelly today. But, they were actually bad. If you want to talk about, an unbiased realism, they were battling through not only just the game and the crowd noise, but also the music was playing during their play calls. And they had to ask the officials, hey, what's going on here? Which I don't know. You can call that pansy. You can call that P-word ball, but I don't know. But at the same time, they overcame all those obstacles. And, 2 bad turnovers inside the red zone. But with the majority of this game, after those first 2 drives where A&M was flying on defense and moving the ball on offense, they came away with no points on offense. And despite those 2 turnovers, the Texas Longhorns moved the football. And they were highly efficient. Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning were a great duo. And I think they should take that recipe and go into Georgia and do the same exact thing. And I think if they do that, they have a good chance to win, which we'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, big winner for me this weekend. A welcome to the SEC moment, for a rivalry, and they got the job done. So
Yeah. Texas is one of my other winners. My two other winners
I'm gonna go cry real quick. No.
were Indiana, because they beat the shit out of somebody.
66 to 0.
And then second, and it's not necessarily like the team outcome, but Kyle Field. That atmosphere and just the whole leading up to it, and even with the music playing whenever, bro, that game and that environment, that just looked wild.
Yes.
And so for there not to be, to kind of revamp the rivalry for the last 13 years, like, I think just that whole thing and how they did everything made up for those 13 years, because that was impressive. That was impressive.
Yeah.
Like, my boss that has season tickets to A&M games, like, he said he had to watch the game with binoculars. Like, he was like, dude, there were so many people and it was so loud. I was like, yeah. So
Yeah.
I like, even though A&M lost, like, for them to put that on after, there was so much, turmoil from them not playing the rivalry for so long, I thought that was very impressive.
Yeah, that intro was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the same too with the LSU game, but that is every time straight chills. You're like, holy smokes, man! And again, a quick point: you will never see that in the NFL. Never.
No.
There is no away game. They hype up the 12th man in Seattle, but there is no away game that really affects the outcome of a game in the NFL quite like college football does.
Yeah.
No.
I had somebody text me and say that this should have been a neutral site game, and I texted them and I was like, I said, you're fucking stupid.
Yeah.
So I won't
Was he
use
a
the other word
Buckeye?
I used
Is he
earlier.
a Ohio
but
State
that
fan?
was like, are you stupid?
Yeah.
It's like, no.
What's his fandom? Do you know his fandom?
I don't remember.
He's probably a Razorback fan.
That was actually the medical guy that said that.
Yeah.
It was Jerry Jones.
Yes.
No, but I think this game just told me that this is UT is probably at its peak. This is the best team they've had in a long time.
Yeah.
I'm not completely sold on them. Just in all honesty, I'm not completely sold on them because they haven't really played anybody in the SEC. But for them to go do that in A&M Stadium kind of puts a little bit more street cred on them. If they go out and they do this and they beat Georgia next week, then they're real contenders. But the flip side of that, so we could move into losers, is A&M. What we need to talk about there is that they have an issue on offense, and their issue on offense is their quarterback is easy to read, and it's easy to see what he's going to do.
Yes.
All you have to do is watch how he lines up his feet, which is literally, when I was in high school, the number one teller to see if a quarterback was going to throw a ball was if his feet were staggered or if his feet were parallel with each other or lined up correctly. And Marcelo Reed's doing that at an SEC level. It's pretty easy to tell. But also running the ball all the time is not going to work. And I just think that A&M's team's a little bit under-talented right now for where they're at. I do think that they're on an upward trend, though. They are a loser this week. But I do think they are on an upward trend. I do think that they're going to show that people that they want. They're already getting a bunch of recruits after this game, even after losing.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a chance that A&M will be pretty good the next 3 years. It's just all up to Elko. So, big loser this week for A&M. That was very tough to watch and frustrating as an Aggie fan, I guess. But they can't seem to win those kind of games right now, and I just think that there's obviously a culture change that has happened, but it's going to take some time, just like it took some time with Sarkinson at UT. So
I will add that I was absolutely distraught and in a piss poor mood right after the game, and the one thing that made me just die laughing was when Jacob started trolling me after the game.
Oh, 100%.
You can ask the guys I was with. I was sitting there and I was just like, they didn't even want to talk to me because I'm just I'm so pissed. And then he sends the yell leader awkward meme. And I said, I was like, man, sit in the back seat as an Arkansas fan or whatnot. And then he was like, he's angry. I just started dying laughing. So I can't stay mad forever. I can't.
I had to send that. I was like, Jared's about to show his true colors if I keep doing this. So I said, he's angry. Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah, no, it was, I just watching it, obviously I'm a Texas fan, but I don't have just absolute hate for A&M. I did want it to be a better game, but I feel like, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like I said in the previous podcast, the biggest thing was going to be Marcel Reed running the ball. And like you said, when they were moving the ball, he was running and improvising. And then on their 2 fourth downs, they got to the goal line and said, we're not doing that. And I was like, what are y'all doing?
Right. Yeah.
Y'all,
right.
When have y'all lined up under center all year? Yeah. Even with Weigman.
Yeah.
And y'all got down there and did it, out of the 8 downs y'all had, y'all did it half of them? I'm saying y'all. A&M did it half of them? And I was just like, brother, what are we doing? You're taking arguably your most athletic person on the field just out of the game.
Yeah.
And so that I could understand how you were angry.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's what I was most frustrated about was the points left on the board.
Yeah. So I was, I had to, rib you a little bit,
Well, I will say, if they had just scored one of those touchdowns and maybe kicked a field goal or whatever, I would not have been mad. The fact that they scored 0 offensive points was why I was upset, because I wanted to win, but the reality of it is when you're sitting there watching that game long awaited, you just want it to be a good game.
Yeah.
And it just felt boring to me. I was like, man, or it just was like, oh man, can we get some back and forth going here? Come on.
Yeah.
It's just nothing, man. I was like, all right, well, maybe next year in Austin. Who knows?
Yeah.
Do you have quick fire losers?
Yeah, do we have other losers, the medical guy?
Yes. Yeah, there's plenty of losers. I'll go with this one. Probably one y'all don't expect, but Oklahoma State. I don't know if y'all paid attention this year.
That game.
They're bad.
They're 3-9. Okay, they are 0-9 in the Big 12. And so I know the Big 12 kind of gets ripped for not being the most difficult P5 conference, but to go 0-9, that's brutal. And
that's a fireable offense.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Oklahoma State was ranked at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, they were.
And
I think they were in the teens.
Yeah, and I mean they've got, a 30-year-old as their quarterback. They had Ollie Gordon. They have the weapons. Oklahoma State is traditionally at least a decent team.
Yeah.
In competition for Big 12 championship most of the years.
Yeah.
And they haven't even been competitive, and then just to get rooted by Colorado. I mean, to where they were just treating them like, redheaded stepchild type stuff, and win 52-0 to where at the end of the game, you've got Shador and Travis Hunter just padding Heisman stats. And it was just, I was like, where has this team gone? And I'm with Ryan. I don't know if Gundy has a lifetime contract with them, but might want to look at that a little bit, or be like, hey, let's improve.
Might want to start reading the fine print there for sure.
Yeah, that's tough. But that was my biggest loser of this week.
Yeah.
I think now we could admit that having 6th, 7th, and 8th year quarterbacks does not work. And it didn't work for Utah. It didn't work for Oklahoma State. It didn't work for Florida. I mean, it doesn't work. If he's been in the college football, besides maybe Bo Nix, but other than that, it's stupid to me.
Brandon Weeden, don't you forget Brandon Weeden.
Oh, he's a dog.
Oh yeah, of course. He's the only one. He's
I was just gonna say, I'll make this quick. I think the number one loser by far is Ohio State. We've already kind of, with the fight, with how they lost the game, with how Ryan Day reacted, and all the videos that came out with that, and them having to mace players, and then getting mad at them putting the flag down. I mean, talk about absolute loser talk.
Yeah.
Absolute loser talk. You had 60 minutes. Actually, Taylor Wan said it best. You had 60 minutes to go out there and kick our teeth in, and you didn't. So then you had to get the police involved and try and beat us up after the game.
Yeah.
And your coach just stood there and let you do it. Like, it's absolutely loser talk. And I think even part of my take said a good example about it is, like, Ohio State, their whole season is tarnished. They could win the college football national championship right now, but they lost to Michigan.
Yeah.
And you can ask any Ohio State fan, they're going to feel that way because they lost to Michigan. You know, Michigan last year beat Ohio State, then won the national championship. Michigan's entire season, which was a complete disappointment, is now a complete winning season because they just played spoiler to their number one rival. So I think that's the big thing with Ohio State. You know, doing that. That's I think they're an even bigger loser than A&M is, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, that was brutal, and to have like you said, people react that way, and then Ryan Day come out in his presser and be like, "Yeah, I don't know really what happened." I'm like, brother, you knew what happened.
Standing there watching the
like,
entire thing.
Like your team got pepper sprayed. Like, are you serious? Like, how do you not know what's going on? So, but my other loser, which I think is a pretty big loser, is the University of Miami. I thought that was brutal. Yeah. But I think Jared and Ryan, y'all have touched on it all year. They've kind of been on fraud alert, just because they're like the Bengals. They have essentially no defense. And props to Cam Ward, because you want to talk about carrying the boats. That guy has carried that team all year. Yeah. So, and then for them to lose like that, especially after Clemson lost, like, whew, that's tough.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I agree. Yeah, my last loser of this segment is USC, and that's mainly because Notre Dame and USC is a long historic rivalry. But what was funny about it, I think they ended the game with like 2 pick sixes. I know at least one. I can't remember if the other one was a pick six or not. But then they scored like a garbage time touchdown down 49-28. But, Lincoln Riley, ever since he's left Oklahoma, which I think is part of the reasons why Oklahoma's hanging on to Venables, is he's struggled over there. I mean, he's 7-5 or 8-4 last year with Caleb Williams. And then he had to bench Miller Moss this year, who's now entering the transfer portal. Now they're going with a younger guy who played pretty well, and they finished 6-6 this year. Just huge disappointment in hiring an apparent offensive guru in a prestigious university like USC. So we'll see how they recover from that. But they got bodied by Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has been increasingly good all year.
Yeah, they've been on a roll.
So we'll see how they do in the playoffs, and I'm excited to watch it. But yeah, speaking into like the path into the playoffs this year, we'll get into our conference, our notable conference championship matchups. We're going to do the Mountain West and the Power Four, and we'll start with the Mountain West. That is number 22 UNLV. They're 10-2 this season, and they're going to play in Boise, number 11 ranked, 11-1. What are y'all's predictions for that? The Analyst, I'll start with you for this UNLV Boise State matchup.
Yeah, I think this is an easy Boise State win. They've already played once this year. I'm pretty sure Boise State won by 7, maybe even 3. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I've got Boise State behind the should-be winner of the Heisman Trophy, Ashton Jeanty, and I think Boise State wins this game like 34-21.
Yeah.
I'll keep my choice sweet. And then they'll go into the playoff and don't expect much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a pretty similar score. I have 35-21 Boise State. I think it's going to be another big Jeanty game. And I think it kind of has to be for him to kind of get over that hump of the Heisman, award and stuff like that. I just hope that he doesn't go into it thinking like that. At the same point, and this is kind of just an extra fact or whatever. Talk about someone that needs to be on the DB list is the UNLV quarterback from the beginning of the year. Yes. I don't remember if y'all remember that whole spiel, but basically the dude said like, "Oh, I wasn't given my NIL money,
Right.
blah blah
Yeah.
blah," and it's like, brother, that's how contracts work. When you don't sign a dotted line, ain't shit given to you.
Right.
And so he found that out the hard way. And then they, their backup, who is arguably, and I don't know if y'all watched him any, but he is a stud. He's
Yeah, he's
very
good.
similar to the Lagway guy over at Florida. Just large human, has a rocket of an arm, insane athlete. And I mean, they've worked their way back to the Mountain West Championship. So, I mean, you know, I hope
Did
it's a
they
good
really
game.
need him?
Yeah, I hope it's a good game. But I'm with Ryan on this. I'm picking Boise State to win. Probably about 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think Boise State. I talked about it a little bit on the other episode, but Boise State's they've got fireworks with Ashton Genty, and not one person this year has been able to stop him.
No.
So I don't see why not this time, I don't see why they would this time. So like I mentioned on the podcast, I've got Boise State winning this game 27-21. And I could definitely see Boise winning by more. I just think with the second time playing each other, it might be a tighter score. All right, Big 12 championship. This is number 16 Iowa State 10-2 at number 12 Arizona State 10-2. In my opinion, this is mid versus mid.
Yes.
Yes.
I cannot.
Can we just
I
roll
can't-
through this one really fast?
Well, yeah, I cannot stress this enough that neither of these teams will do an ounce of damage in the college football playoff. There is no. Can you name one player on either of these teams?
No.
I can name the coach
There you go.
for Arizona State.
Yeah, the coach. For Arizona
Hey, does
State.
Brock Purdy still play for Iowa State? Like,
Yeah,
Jalen Daniels.
exactly. Yeah. What the hell? So yeah, just like at least Colorado had guys where you're like, oh, Shatter or
Yeah.
Travis Hunter, but they're gonna miss out. But yeah, I've got this one in short and sweet. Arizona State winning this game 34-24 over Iowa State. The Analyst,
Yeah.
what is or the medical guy? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I'll go through it pretty quick. I've got Arizona State 28-21. Yeah, regardless who gets in, I don't think they're going to do much in the playoffs, but it is, cool to see someone different out of the Big 12, I guess.
Yeah.
And I know everybody's, for some reason, happy that Colorado's not in it, but Arizona State's coach is at least, he's a game changer. Like, he's turned that program around from what it was a couple of years ago where, the coach is getting fired by the AD, like, walking off the field. So I don't know if y'all remember that, but that was Herm
Subtly.
Edwards,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just like loses a game, and the AD's like, "Hey, bud, don't bother coming in tomorrow." So to turn that around, that's pretty impressive,
Yeah, no doubt.
right?
All right. Let's see. I for this note, I literally have this is the game that you turn on and half-ass pay attention to and do chores while drinking a beer. Like, this is like where you walk.
Exactly
You're
right.
like, you got a Coors Light in hand.
Time to get lunch.
You're like, you're starting your grill up, and you walk through the living room, and you're like, oh, cool. Iowa State is playing Arizona State in the Big 12 championship. I've got Arizona State winning this game by 10, 34-24. And like
There you
Jared
go.
said, neither one of them are going to do a damn thing in the college football playoff.
Well, this next one is definitely a much better one. I've got the SEC championship,
There
and
you
that
go.
is number 5 Georgia in the AP at 10-2, going into Texas at number 2. This is their second time going to Austin to play. I talked about it in the podcast. I had Texas winning 23-21, only because I think they found their recipe to maybe beat a team like Georgia, and that's essentially don't miss tackles and play good run defense. And you saw that all game versus A&M. My only concern with that prediction is what Quinn Ewers is going to show up, which one. So that's the main gig. But that's my prediction. The medical guy.
Yeah, so I've got a pretty similar score. I have 21-18 Texas. I agree with you on the fact that I think this is going to be a testament to which quarterback shows up for each team. They're kind of similar to where, like, what's a quarterback for Georgia? I can't remember his name. Carson Beck. Where you never know what you're going to get with him. Luckily, Georgia's defense is usually pretty good enough to keep them in games. But, there's been games where Carson Beck looks great, There's been games where you're like, how is this guy playing at Georgia? So it'll be interesting. I think if he plays well, they win. However, I agree with you. I feel like Texas has kind of figured it out a little bit. Yeah. But like I was texting y'all after the A&M game, I still have no clue if Quinn Ewers is a decent quarterback or, a product of Sarkisian and his offense and the insane weapons he has around him. So
yeah, I bet Quinn Ewers is hurt. That's
Probably.
my prediction. I feel like something's wrong with him. But the analyst.
Yeah, so I'm kind of shocked Texas is favored in this game. I looked at the line; it was Texas -2.5. Especially after, they're favored after
Wow.
And by the way, this game is being played in Georgia at the Falcon Stadium, and Texas is favored.
I thought it was in Austin.
No, I have
Oh,
that
wow.
it's in the tech. It's a neutral site, quote unquote, Texas.
That's a shitty neutral site.
Yeah, well, I think that's where the SEC. It's just like the big.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm confusing myself because I put like home visitors and home teams,
Gotcha,
and it just means like, okay, they're all at neutral sites. My bad. My bad.
So
I
like
don't
the
know
Big
what I'm
12
thinking.
is always played at Jerry World.
Yes.
The Big Ten is always played at Lucas Oil Stadium.
I got an
So
NFL oriented.
the SEC championship is always played in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
So much for
I'm tracking
neutral.
now. Full tracking.
I'm confused on why Texas is favored in this game, especially after what I was getting at was after Georgia's stomping of them earlier this year. It's just crazy to me that Texas is favored in this game. I need to see. I'm still cautious on Texas. I still like kind of what I was saying earlier. I need to see them beat a good team. I thought A&M was good, but I think they will be down the road. I don't think A&M's quite there yet, but Georgia, Bama, and Tennessee are like the top guys in the SEC right now. And if Texas, like I was saying earlier, if Texas goes in there and beats Georgia in the Falcons Stadium in Georgia, then I think you can almost pencil in Texas as the one or two teams to win the national championship. Regardless of that, I think Georgia wins this game. I think Georgia wins this game 24-20. I agree with Jacob. I don't know what you're getting out of Quinn Ewers. I'm not really sure what the situation is. I feel like that Arch Manning throw in mid-game against Georgia still kind of haunts them a little bit. And I just think Georgia's just more of a sound football team right now. So I'm picking Georgia, but if Texas wins this game, then I'm giving Texas their flowers. They haven't played anybody except for A&M in the SEC, and I'm going to hold on to that.
Yeah, they're one of the few teams
I hate
that
Texas, but
they're one of the few teams that hasn't.
I'll be honest,
played
I hate them. But
it's
currently
fine.
ranked top 25 team. They're one of the few teams.
So devil's advocate, Ryan. Texas goes into there and loses 23, or say they lose 21-20. How do you feel about Texas? Like they play a solid
A&M,
game
and they lose
to Georgia. Like it's a
I
close
think
loss, but
they're
they play well.
dangerous. Yeah,
Okay.
I think if it's close, and I think they're dangerous. That's
Depends
what I'm
on how
saying
they
is
play.
I need to see it competing. If you're going to claim that you're going to come in here and be the top dogs of the SEC, then you got to go compete with the big dogs. And
Absolutely.
You got to go beat them. So
Not Arkansas.
yeah.
Hey, chill out, bro. Dang, bro. That's crazy. His dude finishes
listen,
two.
I've got people at work. I've got UT people at work that are now claiming after the game, after the Georgia game, that are saying that they should have never joined the SEC
Oh, God.
because it's
That's
too hard.
crazy.
We never should have joined the SEC. We should have stayed in the Big 12. And I'm like, okay, a couple months ago, all of you were saying that, yeah, we're going to run the SEC. We're here now. We should have been in the SEC years
Yeah,
ago.
those are the dudes with the Costa,
Yeah.
glasses sitting
So,
in the truck with all
that's
the
why
dude.
I
all
hate
the way
Texas.
down.
Yeah,
Make
the
up
dude
your
with-
mind.
With the backwards hat and the tan
Yeah.
jackets on. Like, that's
He's
crazy.
got a 2 all over,
Yeah.
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 Make up your mind.
Name's
Do
Jared.
you want to
Oh.
play? Yeah. Do you want
Name's
to play
Ricky.
in the
Yeah.
SEC or do you not? So
No,
that's
I
my
agree with you, Ron. I agree.
Voted a certain way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has a certain flag outside of his house. Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah. All right. Yeah, the Big Ten championship. I like their points with the SEC championship. The Big Ten championship. Number 3 Penn State snuck their way in with Ohio State, lost to Michigan. They will be playing Oregon, the only undefeated team in the top 25. This is a good one. I think this is going to be a fun game, but to be honest with you, I think, like I mentioned on the pod, I think Oregon just simply runs away with this game, and with 38-28, Penn State scores some garbage touchdown at the end. But I have not seen good offensive production from Penn State really all year. They struggled against Minnesota, which granted that's a decent team. They struggled against Bowling Green. They lost to Ohio State at home, only scoring 13. So, with all those things being said, I think Oregon continues to get the job done, and they're going to continue to be that top dog favorite to win the national championship this year. All right, the Analyst.
Yep, keep it short and sweet. I really, really like Oregon in this game, and I am easily taking those points. They're minus 3.5 against Oregon. I think Oregon wins this game by 14 and maybe even more. I just am simply not a believer in Penn State, 35-21.
Yeah, it seems like we're all in agreement. I think Oregon's going to boat race Penn State. I have it 38-17 Oregon.
I like it, yeah. All right, ACC championship.
Yeah, so does Red. He's like, Yep.
Sounds great.
ACC championship. Somehow Clemson gets in. Number 18, Clemson 9-3. Will be playing number 8, SMU. Did anybody have SMU being ranked top 10 entering the ACC championship at the beginning of the year?
No.
After benching Preston Stone. No.
No.
That is impressive. However, this is going to be a difficult game for them. Medical guy, I'll start with you, and then we'll work our way around with our predictions.
So I disagree. I think SMU is going to come in there with a lot of confidence. I think Clemson is I think they're going to go in there thinking like, oh, this team just joined the ACC, whatever. And I think they're going to downplay it. I think SMU absolutely houses Clemson and sends them back.
I hope.
Considering they just absolutely snuck in.
Yeah.
After, don't get me wrong, South Carolina's a great team, but like you had every chance to win that game and then, lost. Basically, South Carolina was one-dimensional. And so I think SMU wins this 42-17.
Oh, man, me and you are so close. I was like, he's going to say my score. Yeah. I completely agree with Jacob here. I've been saying how much I like Clemson, and I think they're a good football team, but SMU has been just so impressive this year. And the only thing for Clemson now, in my opinion, is that they are hungry after losing to South Carolina, and that is like that's this game is being played in North Carolina too, so that might help them a little bit, but like their train kind of fell off the tracks against South Carolina, and SMU is full steam ahead, have had zero hiccups this year, and I mean they're going to go in this game, coal churning in that train. They're going full steam. So yeah. I also have SMU. They're looking at the eyes of being, a team that gets a bye in the playoff, and I don't think they're going to let Clemson stand in the way of that. So I've got SMU boat racing Clemson 42-14.
Holy shit!
Let's go.
I think SMU beats the absolute hell out of Clemson.
I'm either going to look like a genius or the word that Ryan almost said earlier in the show. I'm actually changing mine a little bit from the episode I did. Not too much. I still have Clemson scoring the same amount of points, but I made a little adjustment. I've got SMU winning 27-17 in this one. I think it's just going to be a more uphill battle. Clemson's defense really isn't that bad. They played pretty well defensively most of the year, outside of Georgia and their other loss. But, in that South Carolina game, holding them to 17 points, not too shabby. But, yeah, like to all y'all's points with Clemson, 27-17, SMU will get the job done and possibly get that first-round bye. So
let's go Ponies.
I know, yeah, and that's a fun team to watch. It's a local team that not everybody dislikes is in there. So that'll be a fun one. All right, well, that wraps up our conference championship predictions and the rest of the episode. So we will be back next week with a new edition of the Stats and Scars episode, and we'll have to figure out how we'll tweak this episode as the college football playoff goes in, but it's going to get more and more exciting as December and January approach. Or come about. So we'll have a good Christmas episode coming up, obviously. But you can find us on all the platforms using @Shatter the Script. I'll be releasing Shatter the Script episode on Tuesday, Stats and Scars on Thursday. And you may or may not see Challenge the Script. That one has kind of ran out of guests. So it was a fun 9 weeks of incorporating those lists of guests, and it was honestly one of our most watched shows. So it was a lot of fun to do. I'll probably tweak it up a little bit next year and continue to do that. So, all right. We will see everybody next Thursday on Stats and Scars. Boys, appreciate it. And
good weekend of football coming up right here for college football, that's for sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Tune in. All right. See y'all later.